Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. I recently joined as a member, and you can too. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with the advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co.
And please put Unprofessional Development in the How Did You Hear About Podgo? That will give us a little finder's fee. Thank you.
And hit record.
Because we are so live right now.
Okay. Say something.
Something. Do we have questions for the roundtable? That's a nope. I got poems ready. I got the board game ready.
It'd be nice if it was more organized.
It's not going to be organized. That'll be fun.
Blah, 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 blah,
Grab
blah.
that.
Literally.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. Quite fine.
Theoretically, if we didn't prepare and haven't trained.
Yeah, we're figuring stuff out.
I think Edupodlooza broke the internet.
It probably did.
I think it
probably
Twitter.
did. So viewers, we're getting warmed up here. We're going to be palooza-ing very soon. This is the first roundtable discussion, so welcome and thank you for coming. Please tell your friends, your neighbors. If you want to join on multiple devices just to build up your self-esteem, that is also strongly encouraged. So whatever works for you guys. But we're going to be talking about innovation that works here. So some of us are innovators. Some of us know innovators. Some of us want to be innovators. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. And so the first thing, I guess we should have people introduce themselves first, shouldn't we, Tudisco?
I mean, I guess, but we're all so famous, so I don't really see any point.
Yeah, it's pretty much true.
But maybe just for the statement, just to have it out there.
Yes. And this is not like Zoom. So everyone sees the same thing at the top, bottom, and middle, right? Whereas Zoom, you have your own view. So I think everyone sees the same thing. So we'll start with the bottom. So Ryan, go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
All right, great. I'm Ryan Tibbens. I am the host of the ClassCast podcast. I'm a high school English teacher in Northern Virginia, and I'm looking forward to talking with all of these great minds and entertaining personalities this afternoon.
Okay. Go ahead, Sandrine.
So I'm Sandrine Ho. I am a French professor, so university level, and my podcast is called Step Into Mondays, and our bridge is that we bridge theory to practice. So we take ideas from what people say we should be doing, and which are often puzzling, and go like, well, that's how we do it.
Okay. I guess we'll start with Toria on the second row there.
Hi, I'm Toria. On Twitter, I'm at Toria Claire, and I created the podcast Tiny Voice Talks, which is basically giving a platform to the tinier voices in education. There are many English voices, but there are also American voices. There are voices from over in the UIA. And so it's really great because it's become international, which is really exciting. Yes, so that's me. Oh, and I should point out that I am actually a teacher over here as well.
Okay, Batsheva, go ahead.
So, hi, I'm Batsheva Frankel, and I am an educational consultant, a veteran teacher of over 25 years. And my company is New Lens Ed, and my podcast is Overthrowing Education.
Cool. Hit it, Gerardo.
What's up, everybody? Gerardo Muñoz, he, him, his. I am the 2021 Colorado Teacher of the Year. I'm also the producer and co-host of Two Dope Teachers and Mike.
We miss you and love you, Kevin.
Yeah, Kev.
Okay. Lanny, I guess you can introduce yourself too.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lanny Cross. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am not a school teacher, but I do corporate learning and development. And I'm friends with Mealey and Tudisco and here helping out today.
Okay. Okie dokie.
And depending on how demanding we are of you, we'll see if we're still friends tomorrow.
There we go.
If you stop talking to me, I accept.
Okay. I guess we don't need to introduce ourselves because
I think we need to, just for posterity. We're all about posterity here.
Okay. Yes. Oh, did you want to see my posterity?
I do not.
We're live streaming.
Please stop asking me that. I'm Tudisco. I'm in North Carolina. I teach English. Currently teach middle school. I've taught middle school through high school. And I am co-host of Unprofessional Development.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Mealey. I'm the other host of Unprofessional Development. Shout out to my boy, the Angry Ginger from 7 Days a Geek, because he had this thing that's been going on for years called Podtoberfest. And I am a follower of his podcast, and he had this thing that he did back in October. And I'm like, ooh, we should do that with like education podcasters. And so I went and gathered up some education podcasters. We have like a group DM where we spread a lot of love and a lot of encouragement and nonsense. And then I said, hey, you guys want to do this Edupodlooza thing? And they're like, what is an Edupodlooza? And
so you're saying this whole idea is just plagiarized?
Every idea is just plagiarized. That's you're an English teacher. You should know that.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No.
That was our man Billy the Shake.
It's all just like I said, the Wizard of Oz and whatchamacallit is just or Star Wars is just the Wizard of Oz. And then I also convinced someone recently on Twitter that Cheers is just Gilligan's Island. So anyway.
I just want to clarify. Did you say that nothing new under the sun is William Shakespeare?
No.
Wasn't it?
You did say that. No.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay, correct me. What is that?
That's Samson. Not Samson.
No, it's not.
No.
It's Kohelet. It's Ecclesiastes, I think.
Yes.
It's called in English.
Yeah, like who doesn't know that?
Used a lot, just a lot of these and thous.
No, David's
Only if
son.
it's translated improperly.
David's son wrote it. What's David's son's name? Why am I blanking?
Solomon.
Solomon. I look at Samson and Solomon. I get those names jumbled in my head.
Yeah, very different.
Samson's the one that killed the people with the jawbone and brought the walls down. Yes.
Correct.
Who hasn't done that? At least
I know.
once. Like we have bad days.
School year.
Yes, that's what we're doing now. Right now, we're bringing the walls down, baby. Okay, so this is the round table. The topic that we're loosely going to base this on is going to be innovation that works. So we're going to kind of go around to each person, and if they can tell us something that they've done which is slightly different from what either they've seen other teachers do, or it's new, they could have stolen it from someone else, as we all do, and that they've seen some positive results. So let's go in reverse order. Can I go first?
I'll allow it.
It's my palooza. But anyway, I'll cry if I want to.
Palooza.
That's true. It's the world's palooza. But so anyway, so one of the biggest thing I was actually discussing with my children as to which they're like, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? It really blessed me. Hey, there's Mike. Hey, I hadn't even looked on the list. I forgot we were waiting for you, Mike. Welcome to the palooza, Mike. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Mike. I'm in Texas, and I'm hyped to be here.
Awesome. Tell us, give us like a 30-second bio, Mike, so people know who you are, and give your podcast a shout out.
Right, I host the Schoolish podcast, which is where I'm trying to have all these really difficult conversations about school out loud that people are not having, like really, really uncomfortable ones. And that's because the nature of what I do is I kind of have uncomfortable conversations about education for a living. I work for the Reinvention Lab, which is a part of Teach for America. Trying to change that organization. And I also work on school projects on the side and some ed tech stuff as well.
Cool.
Mike, I'm loving your background.
That's sweet. I'm impressed.
It's very reminiscent of like paper cups from the mall in the 90s.
Yes. This is Stranger Things food court vibes is what I
owe. Wow. You guys see, I have the green screen ready, and I started, and I was so slow. I was like, I'm not going to be the guy that lags through this entire live discussion. That's why I barely signed in on time, because I was trying to get fancy, and now I've got it done. Thanks, Mike.
But this is an app. This is a simple app. It's called That's the name of it. It's called
Oh, cool.
Like the
my 2-year-old daughter invented,
just like the artist formerly known as
Yep.
And
there's an Abbott and Costello skit in here somewhere.
Okay. Alrighty. So back to innovation that works. So Mike, just so you know, as we're getting started here, we're each going to take something that we've done different that from other teachers or other colleagues or other schools or whatever that has worked for us or our students. So as I said, I was told my 2 natural-born children, not my school children, that I was going to be doing this. And my daughter was like, oh, you're going to talk about your room or are you going to talk about spiraling? And so I said, well, I don't know, maybe both. So my room real fast, and we're not going to go through sharing it, but if you ever want to see it, just let me know. My room looks kind of like a cafe. I have gone on Facebook Marketplace and asked people who were selling like bar stools and like cafe tables to donate them to my classroom. And it took me about a year or so to accumulate all of it. And I'm regularly having to doctor on them with tools and glue and things like that. But I also took the tabletops and I put whiteboard contact paper on top of there so that my students, and there's whiteboards literally on every wall in my classroom. So I use the common expression, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a whiteboard in my room. I'm sorry to Peter.
That was also Shakespeare.
And yes, and to Lou Diamond Phillips, who I know loves cats. But anyway, but so there's always access to whiteboards, and it really does, get the kids engaged, because there are kids who don't want to work on a worksheet or Chromebook or whatever, but you give them some different colored whiteboards and they will, they'll play on that. And so that's the one thing. And the other thing is spiraling my content, which I give shout out to, and they know a whole lot about it more than me, and they were on a guest on our podcast at one point, the Making Math Moments That Matter guys. That's an excellent math podcast. If you're a math teacher, you're looking for a math podcast to give you ideas how to be a good math teacher, I highly recommend that. And it's good for some other teachers too, but it's primarily math focused. So the concept, and I'll say it in a nutshell, getting into a deep thing, because I could talk to about an hour on it, but is instead of going Unit 1, let's forget about that. Unit 2, let's learn that, take a test and forget about that. Unit 3, let's learn that, take a test, forget about it. And then at the end of the year, give you some kind of cumulative test where you have no idea what we did like 7-8 months ago. What we do is day 1 is the easy stuff from Unit 1. Day 2 is the easy stuff from Unit 2. Day 3 is easy stuff from Unit 3. And we kind of hit the whether it be the remedial or the foundational stuff for each unit in the first 7 to 10 days. And then we go back and we have a day where we review what we did on one of the units, and then we build upon that as we get to deeper and heavier and more rigorous content. And I see
that working really well at like the end of the school year. I assume beginning the school year with that is very overwhelming for your kids.
It's kind of confusing a little bit. It's a little bit where they're not like, okay, what are we doing? But the good thing is, because one of the hardest things to avoid in math is them learning an algorithm and then not even looking at a math problem and just trying to jam like a square problem into a round hole, because they go, well, I know how to synthetically divide, or I know how to factor, so I'm going to factor. It's like, no, we're not trying to factor right now. We're trying to do this. So we're trying to find the maximum, whatever it is. And so this way, it kind of like works a lot of muscles, and I really put it akin to like learning how to cook at a restaurant, where you learn to cook a different type of meal each day, and then you kind of learn a little bit more. But as you go through, they learn a little bit more. But the fun thing is also, as when it comes to lesson planning, I don't have to do it. Like when I'm doing the third time around, I don't have to start with Unit 1 again. I can jump to Unit 5 just to kind of mix it up, because it makes sense for the way the days are going, or what I think might take long. This is going to break their brains on Tuesday. So what unit has like an easy next thing that we can do on Wednesday? And I'll scoot that in on Wednesday to kind of like, okay, today, kids, it's going to be tough, but tomorrow, not only we might spend a little bit of time on the stuff that broke your brain today, but then we're going to kind of go another step forward in this topic on tomorrow. So that's it. Go ahead, Tudisco. Tell us something innovative that you've done in the past year or so that works.
Nothing. I don't really do innovation.
That's innovative in itself. You're the uninnovator.
Comfy. So there are two things I like to do that I find help my classroom, and I don't see enough other classrooms doing. One was an idea from one of my coworkers this year, and it just worked really well. And it has to do with writing essays, because when you write essays, when you assign kids to write essays, it's always a big mess. For those of you who are not English teachers, like some kids can knock it out of the park instantly and just get essays, and some kids are going to struggle with just what is a paragraph. It's such a wide range, and we don't focus a lot on grammar and things. So that's where we really start seeing the gaps of which kids read consistently and which kids don't. So my coworker gave me this idea, and I tried it this year, and it was awesome. And what we did is we did one class period where it was just, all right, here's the essay, write the draft, just right out of the gate. So just here's the prompt, give me 3 to 5 paragraph essay, and that's all we worked on that day. And so it was a lot of like front loading work, because then I have to read through all those essays real quick. But you see which ones basically get it and might need a little tweaking and helping. You see which of them just no essays, and you see which ones really are struggling. And so then what we did is the kids who were able to do really solid on their essays, we could give them like little tips and help them focus on mostly a passion project throughout the next week. So we can sit through with the week with the kids who need you to sit there and hold their hand. And we did that with our first essay, and the other essays we wrote after that were so much more solid, because we were able to kind of build up the kids who needed the extra support. So that's one thing that we did this year that really worked. The other thing I always like doing that I don't see enough other teachers doing is whenever we have to read Shakespeare, because we always have to read Shakespeare, because like Shakespeare said, there's nothing new under the sun. That was him. What I like to do is I like to show them the movie first. You need to watch Shakespeare, and there's so much happening, and the language is dense enough to get through. So if we can show them the movie and they can see, okay, here are the characters, they can listen to the sound of the lines and what the language and vocabulary sounds like, so it doesn't seem so foreign. And then when they see the actors acting it out and they see the progression, they see, oh, here's the good guy and here's the bad guy and all that sort of stuff. Then you stop and you read through it. And that helps you go through and really dive into the language, because you already understand the plot and the characters. Those are my innovations.
Awesome. By the way, let me jump in on the Shakespeare thing real fast. If for anybody who teaches plays at all, always show them at least part of it before. Like whether you do it, like I flip-flop. So I show them the beginning, then we read, then we watch a little piece, then we read, and then I flip it. Then we read and then we watch. Because at that point you should be comfortable enough. But the parallel, the reason like when kids come in and like, oh, I got to read this. I read this guy last year, whatever. I'm like, there's a reason that everybody wants you to read it though. Like it's good, but it's hard. And so imagine if you were asked to read the script of your favorite television show. And so I've done this in the past. Like, you know, I have a couple of screenplays for like random TV shows, and you have them read it and they get some of it. And they miss things that are like obvious laughs. Like they miss obvious jokes, and it's modern English. It's on at 8:00 at night, you know, and then you point out like, how did you miss that joke? Like no one laughed. And like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, guys, it's because it's not meant to be read. No one writes a play for you to read it. They write a play for you to watch it. We write a TV show or movie for you to watch it. Right. So the reason that we read some of them is because they're so well written that there's some little details that are worth your attention, but that doesn't mean you just read the whole thing. And so like, I teach older students too, but really like sort of like sell them on that idea that like we're reading it because it's great, but we're going to watch it because that's really what it was meant for. Like Shakespeare never thought anybody was going to be reading his stuff. So the fact that we force everybody to do it is insane, you know, but you can do this with any play, like any play at all. Like I said, it works just as well with the television shows it does with it. Like flip flop the order of watch and read and watch back and forth. And then remind them that the actual intent is for you to be watching it. We're only reading it so that you can sort of zone in on really great figurative language or strong word choice or whatever those things may be. And I found that
iambic pentameter, huh? I remember that.
Yeah, no, but even that one, and kids, when they watch it, they don't pay as much attention to it. And then I say, like, you notice how like they end a couple of those lines funny, like the rhythm's a little funky. And I'm like, now let's read it, and then you can show them why. But that's huge. Like I think we do a great disservice to students when we have them read plays without watching either any of it or waiting until the end. Like watching it isn't a treat. Like watching it is what you're supposed to do with it.
It's the Overthrowing Education Podcast, and I'm your host, Batsheva Frankel. We all know that great education should be engaging and inspiring, and Overthrowing Education aims to be just that as well. Every episode starts with a fomercial. It's a commercial parody for fake educational products we wish were real, followed by a discussion with passionate educators making a difference. While most discussions are playful, even within our serious and informative chats, the real fun comes when I make my guests play the 5-minute game show at the end of the interview. Each game show is written especially for that episode's topic and guests. Every episode provides practical ideas and tools as well as food for thought. So join me as we overthrow education.
And while you're on the mic, why don't you just tell us something innovative besides that? Which
that's it. It's the only thing I got. That's it. That's all I got. I can. We flip flop the order of watching and reading. That's all I can do.
That's genius.
So I teach, primarily 11th and 12th grade English classes. And the way we schedule stuff, I always request sort of. It's terrible, but the easy way to explain is high and low. Like, give me AP and give me your neediest students. Give me the kids who you're worried they're not going to pass the state test. Give me, whatever. Team taught classes. I had an ELL class last year. I had a team taught SPED class the year before, and that's sort of where I'm at. And so my innovation is really I have trouble with these questions because I'm rarely trying to do something new. I'm just trying to do something that works. But I think one of the things that works really well is because of the age of the students, I'm very honest with them. Like, here's what we're doing. And if we're doing something new, I tell them that. And if we're doing something like, guys, I've done this for, a few years in a row and this works really well, whatever, I treat them as though they're equal participants in it. Right. I don't give up the reins. Like, I'm the teacher. I've got to make some calls here. Right. But in the end, I want you to recognize that you are an intelligent and functional human being, that every kid in that room if they really needed to, could just walk out of the building, go get a job, and live their lives. Like there's nothing between them and that, except that all the other adults say they're not allowed to do that yet, right? And so, but as a result, when I want to do something new, I can tell them that, and I get really good buy-in because they don't think I'm trying to be fancy. I say, hey, here's this new thing, and I think it's going to work better. On the reverse side, sometimes we go very old school. Like I swear I could teach a very good English class with nothing but the Sunday newspaper and line paper and a pencil. Like I could teach you all the skills. I'm not saying it would be the most fun, but I could teach you everything you need to get from a good English class with a weekly newspaper and something to write on. Is that ideal? No, it's not ideal, but yeah, it could work, right? And so anytime I approach,
I'm going to one up you. I could do it with just the funny papers and a crayon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, we really, I think sometimes, when we field a question like this about like what's something innovative you do in school, I think sometimes, and it's an understandable mistake, but I think a lot of teachers sometimes get so fired up about trying something new or become beholden to an ideology or a certain new app I'm trying that all of a sudden, like the tech came before the reason for it. Like someone building a house doesn't pick up a tool to say, I have to use my new tool. They pick up the right tool to do the job. And so I think in discussion,
unless they're the district, because the district loves to do that.
Well, but if you're the
right, because Tudisco does everything the district tells them to do.
right, yeah. But that's a big part of this too. Is I've hit a point in my career where I think enough people around me and my superiors respect what I'm doing, and they see we get good results. That sometimes I can say like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do that a little bit differently here. And in the end, the results are good, so no one really gets to complain too much. Now, if I bomb on something, then I have to apologize and go back. But yeah, we do a lot of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of philosophy. It's an English class. We do a ton of philosophy.
Ryan, can I comment on what you just said? I think that's such a huge point that I think we have to put a pin in it. We can't let that one slide because, I remember in my second year as a teacher, I'd convinced my social studies department to buy this like fancy box of imitation primary sources, right, on westward expansion. I'm like, this is so cool. It's got like a replica newspaper from the period. It's got these wanted posters. It was really great. And my coach, who shout out Doris Dempsey, who I don't believe is on social media, but Doris looked at it, she smiled, and she's like, that's cool. What's it for? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's it for? It's cool. Look, it's like a pretend newspaper. And I think to your point, Ryan, it's easy to like, and my, and when my number comes up, I'll talk about how, smoothly I think my teaching style actually did transition into the pandemic. Like,
go for it. You're on the mic. If you're on the mic, stay on the mic.
Okay. All right. No, but just like Ryan, to your point, I think it's important to sort of understand the situation that our students are facing in front of us before we start rolling out these fancy strategies and these tools that aren't rooted in a relationship. And, I just really appreciate that point because there are cool resources out there that are super useful and, engaging, and they'll help students succeed. But there are some things that you can get really overwhelmed by all of these like toys that are out here. If they don't have a purpose in your work. So yeah, no, for me, I mean, it was just really interesting because, you see social media and you see folks, kind of posting and tweeting about how this year I'm just going to care about the kids and I'm just going to be flexible and I'm going to allow their voice into things. And I'm like, y'all weren't doing that before? Like you didn't care about children before there was a pandemic? And I say that half jokingly. Like I think it's sort of interesting where people are like, your students you have to make sure they're okay beyond anything else. I'm like, I've been doing that for 22 years. Like, so now we're going to say caring about human beings is a radical, innovative idea. Oh. And so that's why I think now there are things that did not work. I have a discussion-based class and so it was really difficult to get students to engage in the way that I was used to having them engage. But, finding different ways to connect to them both on the daily and just in the big picture was really, really important. And like I had one class that would participate for every second, every minute of the period in the chat. So they wouldn't say a word. You didn't see any of their faces, but the chat was amazing. And I would tell them, I was like, man, y'all win the chat daily. Like you're killing it on the chat. And then there were other students who would talk over my 7th graders loved to talk over video. Like they loved it. They would talk over each other. They would laugh. They would make jokes. My high schoolers weren't so much into it. And so I think that flexibility was really important. And then I think from a content delivery perspective, like I think as a history teacher who also taught AP, this was a very important moment for the students to think about, right? I always teach that history is a matter of the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, and how people were feeling and how people were making sense of the period they were in. And I had this aha moment, in a professional development that my district held with Dr. LeGarrette King from the University of Missouri. Shout out Dr. LeGarrette King. This dude is dope. If you don't follow him, you need to follow him. His focus is Black historical consciousness. And Dr. King said, the thing is, in order for young people to not hate history, we have to let them know a couple of things. First of all, this is human beings. Second of all, history is contentious. It's contentious. Different folks will choose to view history in different ways. And the third thing is that there's stuff that's just unresolved. And so for the first month of the pandemic, I was like, I have to be able to explain this. It's all going to be okay, y'all. I didn't know that for a fact. Governments and NGOs are going to do a great job of rallying the people, and the people are going to fall in line. Like, we know this will happen. And we just know that none of that happens. And so I think history became more authentic, because then I could say, y'all, think about the Black Death. They're not sitting there saying, yeah, this is really bad, but in about 60 years, it's going to be fine. So don't even worry. Like, this was imminent doom for everybody. Right. And so what I emphasize to my students is that uncertainty, that anxiety, that fear, that depression, that everything that's affecting you about this moment, this is real. And this is what people were feeling like for real in difficult times that they were living in. And so it really was an opportunity for me to try to stay present and to just know that some stuff is unresolved, So I felt like, and then the other thing is kind of getting over myself. Like, the type of engagement that I needed from students oftentimes was it so I could feel like a good teacher. When they're talking and raising their hands and answering, even if it's the same 3 kids every single freaking time, like, it makes me feel better as a teacher. Okay, so this thing that I want the students to do and to participate in, is it for them or is it for me? And I think that was always my big question.
And I saw a lot of teachers struggling with that over the last year, especially with those really, really quiet classes, because your anxiety fills in all that silence. It's like the first half of Jaws when, like, you don't see the monster and you're just freaking out the whole time. So yeah, when you just get like stunned silence from the kids after asking like every single question, it's really easy for all of that to turn into anger.
To be fair, like that is tough. And Gerardo, I do a discussion-based class too, and it took a while to figure that out. But I straight up, like, we're all people who run podcasts. I would tease the kids, like, from the first week of school. I'm like, look, guys, like, you can all jump in and we can do this thing together, or I can talk at you the entire time. Like, I can sit here with a blank screen. We can just do this, but that's not good for any of us. So that was essentially like the dare was like, if you guys don't chime in, I'm going to hit you with a 90-minute lecture, and that's just how this is going to go. And it became a running joke where the kids would like jump in, and they would sometimes they would interrupt at the worst possible times, and I would just play along with it, because as long as you're engaged, like, we're good. Anytime someone's like, my job isn't to sit here and talk to these kids for that long. And I'm like, I love that you think that. And I hope you keep thinking that when you return to school, because if I see you in your classroom talking at them for too long, then you were lying to me. Like, this is crazy, Yeah, I'm like, guys, you got a podcaster. Here's your teacher. Like, I will talk to you. Please don't make me.
I would also say, though, that it's important to interrogate the term engagement, right? Like, what does engagement mean? Does engagement mean the students are engaging with what I'm telling them to engage with, or are we engaging authentically through a process? One of the big things that I discovered over the past year was the work of Annie Fetter. And math folks, you might know about Annie Fetter, but she's the one that teaches math from a what do you notice? What do you wonder?
Okay. Yeah.
And her YouTube videos are incredible. Like, you see what she's doing with math. So I started to do that around social studies. And what I was realizing is that the thing I thought the students were going to get or should get out of the material was actually not the same thing that they would actually get out of it, and made for a much richer conversation. So yeah, I mean, I did a lot of what Ryan said, was saying, it's like, okay, I mean, it can be my voice or it can be our voices. But then I also thought it was important to say, this doesn't feel important enough for us to talk about. So tell me where you're at right now, and how do I make sure that that you care, that what we're doing here is important to you, and if it's not, what do we do about that? And so I think I've always co-created, like, the experience in my classroom with my students. But I think I really needed to trust that process. Sorry, Philadelphia 76ers fans on the call. I really had to trust that process because they had no reason. I could not coerce or force them to do anything they didn't want to do. and they could just say, oh, my mic and camera aren't working. Sorry. And there's nothing I could do about it. So I had to trust that, I had to trust them with what I was teaching them and what we were learning together. So it was just a really interesting experience in that way, like saying, oh, no, we're actually equal partners in this now because you all can just collectively decide to unplug and make this whole thing a mockery if I don't approach it right.
Why do we do what we do? What's the purpose of school? How do we know what works? We don't want to be slaves to data. We shouldn't fetishize pedagogy. We don't want unaccountable, wild, free-form ideas of education that no one can really figure out how they work or if they do. We need honest, sincere dialogue. We need to talk about what really matters, and that's our students, and that's how we help them to learn and grow and improve. What we need is a discussion that includes all aspects of education, from philosophy to policy to pedagogy. You can find all of that, including interviews with authors, community leaders, teachers, students, and more on the ClassCast podcast. Check us out at www.classcastpodcast.com, on YouTube, and streaming on all major platforms. ClassCast Podcast, where real education happens.
I think something that's important in the conversation that's happening is silence can be a reflection of something else. Maybe they're silent because they don't know what we're asking them. Mm-hmm. They have to process through that. We have to give them that time. And I teach languages, so I have to give them even more time to process what did she just ask me, right? Even if I teach a literature class, they're coming in, I'm asking them a question, they have to process, okay, what was that? They have to put that into the book, they have to bring it back and tell it to me. But so is the question to elevate it? Am I speaking past their knowledge? And in any topic, that can be a thing. And then if we give them the answer because we're not giving them time to think, why are they going to even try? So then you're going to get that cricket because they know I give it 10 seconds and they'll give me the answer.
Yeah, being patient, that's something you always learn as like a first year teacher is like to be comfortable in the silence. But it was definitely much tougher this year when the silence seemed to do that. But definitely I can see that there is a time to process, and just kind of piggybacking off of the Gerardo, what do you notice? What do you want? Is one of the things that I do for fun, just kind of like throwing ideas out there is when we're doing something where I'm wanting them to differentiate between two different, we talked about them wanting to be able to differentiate between two different processes for maybe the same thing. You might see the same type of equation, but sometimes we're trying to factor it. Sometimes we're trying to find a maximum, minimum. And I know some of that's like, doesn't make sense to people that don't speak mathese. But what I would do is I would put up and you can find these on the internet. You probably saw them back in the newspapers, or you might have had them in like a little magazine you got or whatever. The what's the difference images. So it's like a cartoon, and this one has like a hat and this one doesn't have a hat, and this flower doesn't have petals or whatever it is. And so I would have them do that. It might be on a Jamboard. It might be just out loud. Like in the olden days, I would just project it on the whiteboard and say, what's the difference? And all of a sudden, Gerardo talked about engagement. All of a sudden, now we're having that engagement. And I think it's a quality engagement because they're noticing things and they're trying to figure out what's different one from the other. And then when I put up two equations or two graphs or two whatever mathy things and say, what's the difference? Then they can start doing that, that their brain's already engaged in that thing. So they can kind of do that. So, Sandrine, since you were on the mic there, tell us something that you've done differently or that worked for you.
Okay. So,
am I saying your name right, by the way?
You're good.
Okay. Make sure I am. Please correct me.
Technically it would be Sandrine, but that's a French thing, and nobody's ever going to hit it. So I answer to just about anything as long as it's not mean.
Okay.
And still then. No, you're good. No, one thing that, of course, like I said, I teach languages. I teach French. So, and then I'm at the university level. So there is two various elements coming in. So with my students, the element where Gerardo was talking about, students are people. You need to treat them as human. Actually, that's revolutionary in universities.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I have a kid who's in college now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, science is even worse. But, I've had colleagues that found out when pandemic started, the students went home and they weren't able to do their work because they had to have family members. Oh my gosh, that was completely mind blowing to them. It's like, talk to them. So unfortunately, that's innovative in my world. But the thing that I've done is preparing students. And so with languages, we all tend to assume, they've been in school for 12 years. They know how to learn. And languages is different a little bit. So with a friend of mine, we have worked on that to tell them, here is your expectation, and here is where you need to be. One semester, no, you're not going to talk with President Macron on the problem of COVID and where the France is economically on the world platform. That is not going to happen. What you'll be able to do is with broken French, maybe make a hotel reservation, find some food in a restaurant that is not too disgusting to you, and find the Eiffel Tower if you go to Paris. That's where you're going to be at. And
well, first step is just, where's the bathroom? Just learn that sentence and we can build up from there. Yeah.
Right. So you're finding those directions, right? Bathroom, then the Eiffel Tower.
That's all of Paris.
Yes.
Hold on. Can I jump in quick? I have a joke that I use all the time on this. I've traveled a little bit and I'm miserable at languages. And I tell kids this when they're like, oh, I'm traveling this summer. I'm like, you need to know how to say like basically two things, right? You need to know how to order 2 of whatever. I need to order 2 beers. I need to order 2 ice cream cones. And then I need to be able to say, do you speak English? I buy 2 of whatever I have and I walk around and I just keep saying, do you speak English? Until someone smiles and says yes. And I hand them the second one and then they translate for me for the next 30, 40 minutes. And everywhere I've ever gone, I buy 2 beers or I buy 2 ice cream cones. I walk around going, do you speak English? Do you speak English? They say yes. And I hand them one and now I have a friend and we're good. Sorry, that's how I get through foreign language situations.
That's innovation that works, boys and girls. Okay, that is innovation that works.
Fantastic.
Okay,
that's my job. Awesome. I will present them with that plan.
Yes, that's fantastic. Did you have any more you want to share, Sandrine, before we go on to the next person?
Well, I was going to say in that preparation with the whole teaching online and whatever, what I pulled in was doing a pre-plan before every class where I had a document for my students to go to beforehand and go, okay, here is what's going to happen in class today. And here is what you need to be doing so you're ready so it goes through correctly. And it seemed simple. I thought it was kind of obvious when I did it, but my students commented on it. And I know my co-host and friend, Krista, was struggling with her students. I said, why don't you try it? And when she did, it actually completely turned her online classes around. So sometimes we assume students know. So that's kind of the point I'm making here. Sometimes we assume students know, oh, I'm going into an English class. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to go into a math class. This is what we're going to do. And we assume they have the tools, but they don't necessarily have them.
Yeah.
And the reverse too. Sometimes we walk in ready to like spend a week on something and they get it. And we're like, oh, shoot. Can you guys learn slower?
Yeah.
I was gonna say it was interesting because Tudisco and I are very much, and I don't know everyone here. I know Gerardo, having talked to him, that he's and also kind of fly by the seat of your pants type guy, where he, not to like put you on blast there, as the kids say, but I do know that there are certain kids, and it was funny because even as I was preparing the Palooza, there were certain teachers that were like, so what's going to happen? How are we going to do that? What's going to happen next? And what's going to do this? What's going to that? And I'm like, I'm ahead.
Turns out we're people. Just like the kids, right?
Right. And it was, and then there were other ones that were like, hey, what do I do? I just show up. Sure, just tell me what time to be there, and I'll just do that. And I'll just go with it. And it's interesting because they are teachers are human beings, students are human beings, and you have to do your best to try and meet as many needs as you can and check as many boxes as you can to create that sense of security and safety and care so that the kids can learn. So definitely.
Any of you ever tried to do escape rooms in your classrooms? Because they can do with any topic, any subject.
I haven't.
Yes.
I did it over the last year. I
wrote some really bad ones.
I found some virtual ones. But I should say this though. I had a friend who got on Teachers Pay Teachers and bought an escape room for us that was through like what's it? The Google Forms, right? It's 7th grade. I had a 7th grader in my class who was able to like open the source code and scroll down and find the answers and solve it in 30 seconds. I'm like, I'm not even mad. Just don't tell the other kids. Like,
I found that on TikTok. I saw how to do that on TikTok.
I'm so impressed.
Yeah, if you're not on TikTok, you're missing out on a lot of things.
I'm missing out on most of those things, though.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want to know about your students, have them do an escape room and you will know exactly what you need, because you have those. I do them a lot in mine, and students, even colleagues, will go, well, if I had more instructions, it would have been a lot easier. And it's like, well, yeah, I could also give you a recipe. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Then what's the point of you doing that?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like my whole class is an escape room. I just like they desperately want out, and I tell them, well, you're going to have to pass and build these skills. So you'll make it out in June if all goes well.
All right. Toria, you ready to hit us with something?
No, I've been loving the conversation, actually. I'm just writing. I write lots of notes when I'm doing my podcast as well. I just write lots of notes whenever people are talking. So I've just written pages and pages while you've all been talking. It's been fascinating.
Awesome.
I don't think I'm an innovator necessarily. I think, Tudisco said it, I don't necessarily consider myself an innovator, but I teach little people compared to you lot, I think. So my lot are year 4 England, and I have no clue what grade that is, but they come into me at 8 years of age. Mm-hmm. So they're quite young. And over here during during the pandemic, we've had, I think it's 3 lockdowns. I lose track now, but the children have been away from their friends, away from their colleagues. They've been locked down in houses, basically, with everything shut down for months on end. And then they've returned to school. And what I've noticed, which has been really interesting, is that they have been desocialized. So they've moved out of that ability to just socialize normally with one another, to go out into the playground and play, because they've been so used to being on their own, sitting on a computer, doing virtual learning, and sitting on their own computer, just playing games. So actually, something that I've really had to do in my classroom is sort of redefine the power of talk. Now, my classroom is one in which dialogue and talk has always been really important. But in a sense, I've had to reteach children how to communicate with one another. And actually, my classroom now is, it's full of talk all the time. But one of my children said the other day about how much more confident she is now. And I don't know, I'm sure that many educators across the globe have had to reconsider talk in the classrooms with children returning, because actually it is something that has just been impacted really, really considerably. I don't know your thoughts on that, if that's the same for your age groups, if you've had to sort of do the same sort of thing, or if it's just more for the little people.
I'm going to find out in the fall, I think, because we the most I had in my class was like 5 people. So,
yeah.
Toria, I can tell you a little bit, and thanks for that insight. I think that there is a lot of implication for how we address just dialogue in the classroom, and what my thinking is that there are underlying things that prevented kids from verbalizing things on Google Meets or Zoom or wherever you're kind of doing your remote teaching.
Well, I think as well, just to say, there are a lot of schools over here that weren't teaching in that way. So in my school, for example, due to safeguarding measures, we weren't doing it with the children on the other side of the camera. We were sending over videos that we had recorded, which the children were then watching. Yeah. And we were online. So I was on my Google Classroom the whole time to see the children giving their work in and being able to respond and support. Right. But at no point was I on the other side of the camera.
Gotcha. To them. Yeah. So that is going to be really interesting. When I think of my own context, it's going to be more about what are the things that are preventing students from verbalizing their ideas, and particularly in middle school. I would even say more so in high school. There's a lot of self-consciousness. Am I gonna misspeak when I say something wrong? I hate the sound of my voice. I don't want to hear it, and I definitely don't want others to hear it. Somebody's gonna call me out. Somebody's gonna make fun of me. Somebody's gonna.
Anybody looks at me, I'm going to die.
No, I mean, that's it. But also, we also know that like there's an issue at another school here where kids were screenshotting like their classmates and making really mean like memes and posts about them. Yeah. And so like there are some very valid reasons. And so at our level, we'll have to address it address like understanding again what the social emotional reasons are that we weren't hearing their voices, and that they're not just going to flip a switch when they come back. And Tori, I can't even imagine at that point. It's like you would almost just need to, it's like sentence stems, right? It's like, okay, so
it was. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. You go back right to the beginning, and it was really funny. Just the very first conversation. So I always put out these stupid questions for my children, like what are the similarities and differences between Superman and Spider-Man, or what are the similarities and differences between paper and chocolate? And up to that point, up to the point of lockdown, my children could have conversations with each other. They returned, and they'd lost that ability to face the person they were having a conversation with, give eye contact, recognize that they needed to move their body. It was really, really interesting.
I would even offer that I think
gone.
The nature of dialogue, I think, will have changed. That even coming back to what I once envisioned as an academic conversation, I think that's all going to change, because it's 15 months of trauma where we've been impacted. And so I almost think that even what we saw as dialogue in the classroom, no matter what level we were teaching, it won't be the same this coming fall whenever we're back fully in person.
Just real quick with that, because I teach public speaking. And so we had to do public speaking online, which is wild, and it's 9 through 12. So I have freshmen through seniors through whatever, and trying to figure out like the dynamics of like talking about, reading the feedback from the room, when everybody has their cameras off and this kind of stuff. And so, I build generally pretty good relationships with these kids. And so we've been talking about it. And the screenshot and meme making of classmates was actually one of the biggest deterrents to kids having their cameras on. They're like, look, people are taking pictures of other people in class and doing whatever. And so we hit the point where I was like, look, you don't ever have to have your camera on here. I appreciate if you do. But if you're going to be speaking, like giving a speech, like not like, I have a question that takes 15 seconds. Like if you're going to be speaking, your camera has to go on. And we're always going to have at least 3 or 4 people who are going to have their cameras on too. And it literally came to me like saying 50% jokingly that if I ever caught somebody screenshotting someone else from class, that I would show up at your front door and we'd have to talk about it in person. And everybody's like, it's kind of funny, except for like the 4 kids who might have done it. And it seemed mildly threatening, but it was just enough that we could cool that behavior out. Mm-hmm. It's a dumb thing to have to say at all, but that was really it. Yeah. But that's also a place where I think the way we respond to these things is going to be very different, say for high school student versus elementary, especially early elementary. And it's something that I'm concerned about as we say, hopefully fully return to school in person and all this stuff next year, is that at say a county or a district level, there's the tendency to say, this is what we're going to do. And we don't always get sort of effective differentiation at the policy level between what we need to do for a second grader versus what we need to do for a 12th grader. And so what is an appropriate way to run your class, or what your expectations are for kids' behavior in a discussion, they should be different. But that also means that if you want to empower teachers, you need to help them understand either what's going to be different or give them the freedom to make choices in how that's going to run in their classroom. Because what you need to do in second grade is not going to be necessarily the same solution in 11th. And I get worried because when I hear, superintendents or school boards sort of addressing this, they start making these big blanket statements about what we're going to do. But the kid who's 16 had a lot of experience in school ahead of time. Like they're going to bounce back probably a little bit easier than the kid who's in first or second grade and doesn't have that background. Yeah. And for someone in an administrative position to pretend like we can just slap a Band-Aid on this and there's one thing that'll work is both, I think, counterproductive but alarming. And that's a lot of the talk I've heard as we start thinking about coming back in. So like those soft skills and that discussion piece is going to be a really big deal, I think, coming up this fall.
I'm just going to touch on that for just a second. The challenging thing is, even though for those kids that are 16 and 17, like my son, he's going to be an 11th grader next year. Well, we kept him home, we opted for the full remote thing. He has going to be walking into his junior year, having not been in a classroom since he was like barely a freshman, like halfway through his freshman year. So it's going to be like,
my kid says she still feels like she's in 9th grade.
Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment, and just all those dynamics of how to be with your friends, or whether it's someone that you're the whole dating just drama and headache and nightmare that can be going through high school is now like magnified because you are like so much more immature than and it's gonna be a lot of weirdness and awkwardness and anxiety. It's gonna be a lot. We're gonna have to hold their hands a lot next year, I'm sure, and we need to be ready for that.
Thank you, and stay unprofessional. Stay unprofessional. Stay unprofessional.